You're about to cross the threshold from the familiar into a realm beyond sight, a dimension not only of fear and faith, but of shadows and salvation, and where lives become a battleground, where evil lurks and courage fights for the soul. What follows is not fiction, not myth, but something much darker, something more real. Let's take up arms in this spiritual combat here on Things Visible and Invisible. Paul, the last time we spoke, we visited hell together. Now we're going into combat together, but not the combat that most people would know of, be it in the Pacific or Europe or in any other region of the world. We're going into a sort of more esoteric battle, a spiritual battle. And you are going to tell us about Catholic saints who battled Satan. Let's start at the beginning. Presumably this battle has been going on for some time.
Well, it is. It's, in Scripture, you have the account of the creation of the human race. And right away, the serpent shows up in the garden, tempts Eve, and then through her tempts Adam. And they disobey God about something that was very important. They apparently didn't realize it at the time. And that begins all of our woe, all of our life in misery and conflict and all the rest, because we'd broken our relationship with God. He's the source of every good thing. And if we damage that relationship, we're going to have a lot of bad things in our lives. So the battle goes all the way back there. But you see it very clearly in Scripture when you hear, for instance, in the book of Daniel, where there are spiritual powers over countries that are being battled by good angels. You have, in the New Testament especially, one of the primary ministries of Jesus was to do exorcisms, to cast demons, bind and cast demons out of people who have been possessed or afflicted by demonic powers. And the tradition of the Catholic Church is that soon after, some point after their creation, the angels that God had created, much higher than us, much more powerful, intelligent, capable of all kinds of things that we can't do, but a different non-human intelligence, that some of them also rebelled against God even before our rebellion, and then those started a battle. You can use the word symbolically if you want, but that's what it is: a conflict with God. The good angels, they lost, of course. You're not going to win against God, and cast out of heaven. And so what did they do? They came to earth, at least some of them, in order to capture God's new creation of a creature made in his own image. They wanted to be sons and daughters, and to try to tempt them, test them, seduce them away from God, and to end up sharing their own misery forever.
Now, again, we better define terms, Paul. I think theologically, angels don't have any body. I mean, they are pure spirits. So what sort of combat with us mere mortals are we talking about? I mean, it's obviously not hand-to-hand combat in a sense. Can we define what the elements of spiritual combat consist of?
Sure. And I will say, even though, yes, the Catholic tradition affirms that angels don't have bodies, so fallen angels don't have bodies, that they can still exercise influence or power over physical objects. With a good angel, you see an example of that in the gospel, where an angel rolls the stone away from Jesus' tomb. So, affirming that, yes, even though they don't have bodies, they can still affect our material environment. But what you find, the church talks about what it calls ordinary and extraordinary battle with the devil and his demons. The ordinary can be summed up in the word temptation, that they're able to put thoughts in our minds, they're able to organize situations around us so that we're put into what we call the occasion of sin. We're put in a place where it becomes relatively easy to sin, or at least sin, the possibility of sin presents itself to us in an attractive way. And doing that then is the way they come against most of us in battle. They try to tempt us, test us, pull us away from God and from making the right choices that make us closer to God. but that you do have examples of the extraordinary activity of the demon, and that does often include physical things where they can attack a physical body of a person, and all of these I've seen cases of before. Can attack the body, can attack physical objects around the body, make things levitate. Um, they can influence the inner soul of the person to tempt them to terrible things and self-destruction, especially. And then the kind of the most severe type is what people know as demonic possession, where they are able to enter the body and episodically, not all the time, but episodically take control of the body, so that the person is not even aware of what's going on, but it can speak through them, can make the body levitate, can give supernatural or superior energy to the body to cause it to do things the person couldn't do on their own. So those are the kinds of battles. You've got all the way from just temptation, mild kind of temptation, all the way to actual possession and a whole lot of levels in between.
So that's the attack, Paul, the enemy attacking us. What are our defenses? What are our weapons in this spiritual combat?
Well, it's wonderful. As a Catholic Christian, I can say that we've been given, first of all, the sacraments. So the Eucharist, confession, baptism itself from the beginning, other sacraments. We've also been given prayer. That's very clear, where Jesus talks about when he meets a man whose son is demon possessed and he casts it out, and the apostles say, "Why couldn't we cast him out with your power?" And he said, "This kind only comes out by prayer and fasting." Actually, so fasting is a way of increasing the power of prayer. So that's part of it. The church has given us sacramentals. Those are objects that have been blessed by the church, or they are blessings themselves. The sign of the cross, blessed medals, blessed crucifixes. You see the old stories, especially of vampires, that kind of thing, which have some roots in reality. I'm not saying vampires just exist, but in the awareness of the culture from which that came, the sacramentals have a certain power. You always see in those stories, it's the sign of the cross or crucifix that makes the evil back off. And I've seen cases of this. It's true. It's not just Hollywood. We also have, we have the defense of fighting alongside other Christians, praying for each other, helping each other resist temptation. We have all the things that I guess the spiritual life consists of, when used properly or exercised properly, become part of our armor. St. Paul, the apostle, talks about the armor, and that's really our defensive weaponry, you might say, our armor, where he'll talk about the virtues. So the breastplate of righteousness, the helmet of hope, also sometimes he calls the helmet of salvation, the sword of faith. So all the virtues help to protect us in that the enemy of our souls looks for a weakness in our character, and that's the place he usually tries to attack. St. Ignatius of Loyola once said that the soul is like a fortified city, and just like in our world, or at least in his world, when a fortified city was being besieged, they would send out troops or scouts who would go around and to find a weakness in the city wall. Maybe someone left the door or a window open. Maybe there was a crack somewhere. Maybe a place where they could dig under. But when they found the weakness, that's where they would concentrate the attack. And so that our souls are like fortified cities, and the places where we have weaknesses, the place where the enemy will come after us. But on the other hand, let me tell a great story. How the virtues protect us. There's a story from the early centuries of the church of the monks who were living out in the deserts. This probably was Egypt. And one of the monks, he was a young man, was known for his great humility, which the church fathers usually said was the ground in which all the other virtues grow. So he's a very humble man, and the enemy of his soul says, if I can get him to be proud and damage his humility, I'll get not only to him, but I'll get through to all the people who admire him for his humility and try to use him as a model. So one day he shows up, the monk's in his room, his cell, praying, and a demon shows up, but looking like an angel of light. They like to look like good things to fool us. And says, I'm paraphrasing, but something to the effect of, "Oh, you great mighty man of God, I've been sent to heaven to you," to try to tempt the man to be vain and to lose his humility. But the man was so humble, he didn't even look up from prayer. Instead, he just said, that can't be me. You better go check with the guy in the next room. And the enemy goes, curses, fall again. He doesn't say those words, but it's a great thing, because what had happened, St. Paul speaks of the enemy's temptations as fiery darts that come to our heart to try to get a hold inside of our soul. But his humility was so great that it was like a breastplate. The thing hit the breastplate and fell to the ground. It had no power over him because of that virtue he had.
Absolutely. Now, we've talked a lot about the unseen enemy, in the sense that it's a spiritual combat, less material. However, in your researches in the saints' lives that you've looked at, has any of this warfare materialized itself in actual physical assaults?
For sure, yes. So St. Anthony of the Desert, who lived in the like 3rd, 4th century, that period, he was, yes, physically assaulted by these things, beaten and bruised and bitten and all kinds of things. But again, he resisted all that with his spiritual resources. You have others like St. Gemma Galgani, much more recent, the 1800s, physically assaulted. Padre Pio, St. Pio of Pietrelcina, physically assaulted. St. John Vianney, physically assaulted. We have records of a number of them actually being physically assaulted.
And what's the theological understanding of that, Paul? That does God allow these physical assaults, or what end does it serve?
It's a great question, and the word temptation actually means trial or testing. And I talk about some in one of my books, that why does God allow temptation, trials? Well, for the same reason you try silver. You have silver and you're trying to refine it, so you test it in the fire. And so the church's tradition has always been that God allows temptations, trials, to test us, because every time we're tested, are we going to choose God or choose something else? Then every time we say yes, it actually strengthens our will. It puts more iron, you might say, in our spine, and makes us better and makes us more able to resist the next time. So the whole system, you might say, of temptation that comes to us, he allows it because the greater good can come out of it. If we say yes to God, we say choose the right thing, then it makes us stronger. It perfects us. It's purifying the silver of our soul.
What was the most surprising devilish assault that you came across in the lives of the saints?
Maybe St. John Vianney. He was living in the 18th century.
This is a French Saint Paul, is it? A French parish priest, I think.
Yes, that's right. And he is the patron of parish priests. And he had a hard time even getting through school to get into seminary, because he wasn't like a brilliant intellectual, but he had a remarkable faith. I could say so many good things about St. John Vianney. But the things would come to him in all kinds of forms and do things like, he'd wake up in the middle of the night and they're creating this sound like a whole troop of horses going over the cobblestone outside his door. They would pull the blankets off of his bed. One made a sound like this really loud nightingale in his chimney singing. So a lot of what they did to him was just to harass him. But that was kind of surprising to me. So many ways. Padre Pio too, St. Pio Pietrelcina, they came to him. They can make an appearance in any way they want. They would come to him sometimes as a dog, as a monkey, as a naked woman, as Jesus, as Mary, as other saints. One time even, one showed up looking like his spiritual director. It was a man who was still alive, and trying to trick him into doing something wrong. And so those were kind of surprising. And then you find out there are others like that. But Pio was probably the one that had the most amazing. And he's, this is not some kind of legendary thing. His life overlapped with mine. He lived into the 60s. And so it's not legend. It's, these are verified stories. But the kinds of forms they would sometimes take in order to trick and deceive people in the end, were very surprising to me. In other words, you don't just look for somebody with red horns, or red skin and horns and a tail. They can show up in all kinds of ways.
In your researches, have you sort of worked out the sort of modus operandi of the other side, the enemy attacking? Are there consistent themes that keep coming up in these assaults upon the battle engaged between the saints and the other world?
Yes, certainly demonic strategies. I've also written a book called The Manual for Spiritual Warfare, and kind of laid this out, the theology of it there. But there are certain things strategies that the enemy will use. One is deception. It's already pretty obvious. He helped, for instance, and you can find biblical examples, but also examples from history, from your own life. So, for instance, the way in the form of the serpent, the demon tried to lied to Eve and said, "Oh, you're not going to die. You're not going. This is God's just trying to put you down, keep you down." So, lying, deception, doubt, putting doubt in our minds about God's goodness or His existence, even doubt about who we are and our relationship to God. He can stir up the passions that we have and provoke us to anger, to lust, to jealousy, to rage, those kinds of things. He likes to kind of provoke us. I call it provocation. He also, pardon me, likes to, what's the word I'm looking for? I guess that when it comes down to it, he's trying to give us something evil, but makes it look good, whether he does it through deception or doubt or provocation. Enticement, I guess, might be another way of describing what he does. Put something good in front of you that looks good, and even that we're created to enjoy, and then to say, well, the way to get this is to do this, and it's something wrong against God. So a great example is Eve in the garden. So he leads her to think about how the tree of life, or tree of good and evil, how if you have it, you'll be like God himself. And that would have been very attractive to a woman created by God, as she was, because she was created to be in God's image. She's supposed to be like God. That's the whole idea. So he was offering to her something very attractive, to be like God. Everything inside of her wanted to be like the God who had created her and loved her. But then he says, oh, and by the way, to do that, the best way to become like God is to disobey God. And that's where he caught her, And he'll do the same thing to us. He'll offer something really good and attractive, and then say, and the best way to get this is X, and whatever X is actually evil.
Absolutely fascinating. Paul, unfortunately, we have come to the end of our battle here on this show tonight. So tell people where they can find out more about you and where they can pick up a copy of one of your many books.
Sure. The best place to go is tanbooks.com. That's the publisher, Tan Books. You can also get almost all my books, or at least the ones still in print, on Amazon. And but I also encourage you to go to your local Catholic bookstore to buy a copy.
For now, Paul, thank you so much for coming on Things Visible and Invisible.
Thank you, Sean. It's a real delight. God bless you and all your listeners.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of Things Visible and Invisible. We're dedicated to uncovering phenomena that challenge our understanding of reality, from ancient enigmas and paranormal encounters to scientific anomalies and forgotten histories. If you enjoyed this journey into the mysterious and unexplained, please consider subscribing to our channel and hitting the notification bell to stay updated on future explorations. Have a personal experience or story that aligns with our investigations? We'd love to hear from you. Visit our website at tvi.show and reach out through our contact form. While we can't feature every submission, we review them all, and your story might be featured in an upcoming episode. To support our continued investigations, please consider becoming a Patreon supporter or channel member. Your contributions make these explorations possible and give you access to exclusive content, early releases, and monthly behind-the-scenes discussions with our team. Don't forget to check out our merch store. We've got everything from TVI-branded t-shirts and hoodies to stickers and coffee mugs, perfect for showing your support while keeping the mysteries close. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time as we continue to explore the things visible and invisible.